And so when I say prostitution, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my gosh, she was a streetwalker. She was walking on the street and she was selling her body, hopping in and out of cars, and the traditional, what we've been conditioned to believe about prostitution, and that's not my story. My
Right.
story is, however, based upon the definition of prostitution, which says that if you give your body or a sexual act in exchange for something of value or monetary value, then you have in fact prostituted yourself. And I know that I am not the only person who have been with a man who said, oh, I need to get something, whether it was their rent paid, their hair done, regardless of how superficial it was, your child's tuition. For me, during that time, during high school, I wanted my school fees paid. I wanted to look a certain way. And so that's what I did.
Hey, Diseree, how are you?
How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Lovely to have you join us today. It's wonderful to have you on Future Fit.
I love you so much for having me all the way in the UK. This is amazing. I love technology.
It is amazing. I mean, I know for you, your central time, so it's 8 a.m., kind of, well, about 8:26 now, where
Yeah.
you are. But it's wonderful with technology that we can stay connected like this. And to be honest, a lot of positive things have come out of COVID-19. I think we're all aware of the benefits of technology, but I think most of us are just tapping into it a lot more, and we suddenly realize, actually, I'm not limited. The world is really my oyster. I can go anywhere. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, but
By
thank
our
you
own
for.
thought processes. So this is awesome.
Sorry, I'm so excited for what you're going to share with us today. You have an amazing story that I know is going to really encourage a lot of people. But I've told our audience a little bit about you, but I just want you to just introduce yourself and tell us more about you.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Diseree Clay. I am the Des of Des 360, which some listeners and viewers probably know me from that platform. I am a master certified transformational coach. I'm a speaker, a published author. I am a wife, a mother of four children, and I am a Jesus lover. So that's the short version. I am an overcomer. I am a survivor. To add a little bit more to that.
You absolutely are a survivor. I mean, I read your bio on your website and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And for me, it's not just about where you're coming from, it's about where you are right now. It's about being able to come from where you've been to where you are right now. And that's why I'm excited for what you're going to share with us today, because our audience might not have gone through half because it's like everything got thrown at you. It's like, everything. And our audience might not have gone through half of what you've been through, but I know that there are people out there who, because of their past, because of things, some people it's just maybe divorce even, and they feel
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm not good enough. There's things like that tend to make you feel like you're unworthy, that there's something wrong with you, and so people find it difficult to move forward. I want you to just give us a bit of background to where you're coming from.
so, I don't know if you planned this out because you knew I was going to be on the show, but what you're saying is dead on. You talked about a growth environment. And I absolutely love everything that you mentioned because guess what? Change is happening all around us. So you might as well be proactive instead of reactive, right?
Yeah.
And so, I had to find that out later though. Instead of being proactive in the changes that were taking place around me, I found myself being reactive to everything as it was being thrown at me. I was, dodging bullets and having to fight and put my hands up. And so I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. And most of what you hear, or some of what you hear about Chicago, is absolutely true. It is written in that area, the Inglewood area, with gang violence and just violence in general. And, you know, um, it's just not conducive for children, so to speak. Now, anybody can make it out of there, of course. And when I say make it out, I'm saying that because that's something that I had on my mind personally. I looked around me and I didn't see much positivity. Like the people were great. I loved my city. I loved my block. I loved the people there, but I just felt like it was so much more because I had started to be exposed through more. And so the more I was exposed, the more I wanted those things that I was exposed to. So just, trying to figure out, well, how do you get out if you've never seen someone do it? What examples do you have? Because sometimes seeing is believing.
Mm.
And so, if you're the pioneer of something, if you're the first, to set a record, you have no blueprint to follow. And so
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I felt like that was me. That was my story. I didn't grow up hungry. I wasn't hungry. I didn't go without anything. So I like to preference all of my, interviews with that, because that's not what it was. It's just that I saw more and I wanted more. And then, of course, decisions started to happen, life starts to happen. And, I started falling victim and falling into the traps that were set out there before I was even thought about.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned in your bio that you went through um, prostitution. You mentioned
Yeah.
that in your bio. How did abortion, homelessness? You said
Yeah.
you went
Okay.
through that.
Let's let's clear. Let me interrupt you there, because I always, and I put that there because I want to bring attention to it. And I want to bring attention to it because I want people to just live in their truth. That is one of the things that I just really want. Like, if I can just shake people, like, just tell the truth. And so when I say prostitution, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my gosh, she was a streetwalker. She was walking on the street and she was selling her body, hopping in and out of cars, and the traditional, what we've been conditioned to believe about prostitution. And that's not my story. My
Right.
story is, however, based upon the definition of prostitution, which says that if you give your body or a sexual act in exchange for something of value or monetary value, then you have in fact prostituted yourself. And I know that I am not the only person who have been with a man who said, oh, I need to get something, whether it was their rent paid, their hair done, regardless of how superficial it was, your child's tuition. For me, during that time, during high school, I wanted my school fees paid. I wanted to look a certain way. And so that's what I did. I began to have sexual interaction with guys based upon what they can do for me. And then I got so good at it that I didn't even have to even promise sexual acts. It was the tease of it all. And so that's what I did. And so when I went through my own journey of transformation, and I'm still on a journey, it never ends. We're constantly evolving as people. We're constantly growing.
Absolutely.
But my story was, hey, I want to make sure that I call everything by name, because I can then identify it. Like you mentioned, there's a level of awareness you have to have in order for change to occur. And I no
Hmm.
longer wanted to lie to myself about what it was that I was doing. Did I feel good when I was doing it? Absolutely not. I really didn't. I just knew that there was a means to an end. Um, my family grew up where my grandmother worked really, really hard to take care of us. And my biological mom, and there's a reason I keep saying biological mom, but we'll get to that later. My biological mom, she works a lot, but it just, for me in that time, it was never enough. But there were some needs, some social, emotional needs that I did not have met. And so I saw other ways to get those needs met.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. I really, really appreciate your honesty,
Yes.
because like you say, we like to lie to ourselves, and
Hmm.
I appreciate your courage and your boldness. That it's not everybody that will be happy to just put their story out there for the world to see, for everybody to know what's happened to you in your past. But the good thing is, it's in the past, and by sharing your story, you're able to give hope and encouragement to ladies who perhaps have been there as well. And like I say, they're judging themselves and they're condemning themselves and saying they're not good enough because of what's happened to them. I think that's the power of your story, that you can turn around to people and say, listen, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You were where you were because of the level of awareness you had at that time.
Time.
You're not that person now. So what you need to keep doing is raising your level of awareness. And that's why I'm passionate about what I do. And I know you are as well, Diseree. That's why we do what we do, to raise awareness. So I think that's very, very important and very powerful about your story. But I want to talk now about when and how the transformation began. What was it that triggered it for you to say, this is not the life I want for myself, I want to change? Because I was talking about change before you came in, and I know that change can be very difficult, and sometimes you need a really strong trigger to make you feel like, I really need to change. So what was it for you?
So, Lauren, in the comments, I'm reading the comments as well, and I know you also read our comments about the whole family dynamic. And here's the thing, and because I'm a Christian and I love the Lord, I always bring him up. I can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain generational curses that I had to break. And that's why my change was so challenging, because it wasn't just the environmental things, it was a spiritual thing. And so, again, when you are the first person, the chain breaker, the enemy is going to come after you even more so. But I knew when I was a little girl, like I used to tell my sisters and my biological mom, like I didn't fit in. Like I was just like, I don't fit in. I never fit. And I couldn't figure out then why I didn't fit. Well, now I know, because I was never designed to fit in. I was always designed to stand out. But you couldn't tell me that as a little girl. I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to fit in my family. I wanted to fit in the environment I was in. And nowhere I went, it didn't matter who I was portraying myself to be, it didn't fit. And so I knew that in order to get out of the environment that I was in, I was going to have to use my education, because the one thing that was consistent were the educators in my life. Those were the people that I was able to really look to for guidance. And that's partly rather the reason why I became an educator myself. I'm a former teacher of 10 years. And so those teachers always believed in me. They always pushed me to be great and to do more and to be more and to show up more. And so I was like, the only way I'm gonna get out of here is through my education. And so that for me became kind of what started shifting my trajectory mentally first, because you do know that before we do anything behaviorally, there has to be a mental mindset shift. There has to be the reframing of our thinking. We have to, break those limited mindsets and beliefs that we have. I ended up meeting the woman who I call my mom now around 7th grade. She came into my academic world as a coach and another staff member at the school and a teacher. And she kind of took me under my wing, and so under her wing, and she started polishing me. So my grandmother did a very great job, and my bio mom, of foundational things. But sometimes they took me as far as their capacity could. And so I always like to say that people can only give you what they have to their capacity. So in that, as an adult now, I look back and I have, my bio mom and I, we had a very estranged relationship for quite some time. We communicate now, and it's getting better. It's a slow and steady pace, but we're cordial. We're able to speak and be in the same place. But I published my book in 2015, and she was one of the first people to purchase the book. And she texted me out of the blue. I hadn't heard from her in forever, years. And she's like, I have questions. And I was like, that's perfect, because I have answers. And so, because I also had questions. And so when we talked, she realized that some of the things that I had gone through, she didn't know about. And I forgave her in that moment, because I never told her. I never gave her permission to show up as my mother and defend me. I was molested. My earliest childhood memory was being molested in kindergarten, 5 years old. And so my book talks about the story. So when you were talking about seeds being planted, my book, Beautiful Like a Flower, takes us all the way through the whole process of a flower. I compare my life to a flower, from the seed being planted to pollination. And so when you were talking, I was like, I just love this all seed talk. This is great. And so she and I had some dialogue and some conversation, and we were able to come at least to an understanding. And I told her that if you have any more questions, I'm available, because I essentially was living a double life. My family had no idea most of the things that I was doing. Okay. And I was a high schooler. And then I was able to meet my mom in 7th grade, and she polished me, and I was able to get out through the avenues that she was able to get me with connections and resources she had. And I left and ended up going off to college in Louisiana. So that right there was the first change. There were multiple, but that was the first thing, to get out of that initial environment that I was placed in. Because oftentimes, we can't change our circumstances because we're born in it. Our family, you can't change family. You can't change, as a kid, what can you do? You have to learn to deal with it and cope with it. But the moment I had an option, I took some options.
Awesome. Let me just ask you, I'm just interested to find out, did a particular incident happen that made you decide, I don't want this sort of life for myself anymore, I need to get myself straight? Did something happen to trigger that, or
Yes.
okay?
I answer that. So obviously looking around, I just started to see doom and gloom, like, between the drug, the people that were around me that were addicted to drugs, my, close friends, their families were, we call them drug addicts and things like that in our community. And, crackheads, all those things, like, that environmental thing, dodging, like walking down the street and it's a drive-by shooting. But the main trigger, those things actually were normal, right? The trigger for me was when I found out that I was pregnant and I was a freshman in high school.
Right.
And I was never taught about myself. I was never given a talk of the birds and the bees, right? Never. So everything I found out about sex, I found out accidentally, right? And so after being pressured, peer pressure, I ended up, of course, for me, I just couldn't understand how I got in a situation, like how me, why me? And then I knew that I did not want to be, maybe the girl down the street who was on her second baby and she had to drop out of school. I couldn't become that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't settle in that way. And not to say that children aren't a blessing, but children at the wrong time can definitely add struggle to your life. And so I didn't want it. I couldn't. I knew that if I started following in the steps of the people that were around me, then I would find myself staying in that same environment. And I couldn't do it.
Right. Because I'm sure there are loads of comments coming through. Let me just read some of them. Question. Okay, I knew somebody would have a question, which is why I was eager to come here. So how did you learn the skills if you were never shown? Going through this at the moment in emotional regularity. My parents get so angry, and my sister follows suit with her family. I don't want to be like that. So how did you learn the skills? I know you talk about the woman you call it mother now, who trained you and maybe taught you some things. Lauren's question is, how did you get the skills if you were never shown? The skills to break, yeah.
So skills to break. Okay,
The
so there are
skills to break out, yeah.
Okay, so I have to go biblically here because before we were formed in our mother's womb, God knew us. He equipped us. He called us, right? And so there are certain things that are innate inside of us. And it just takes a certain thing to make it flourish. So we talked about a seed earlier. When you plant a seed already knows what it is. So if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple, right? An apple never tries to grow up and be an orange. It never tries to grow up and be, just a flowering tree. It goes back to who it is, who it was created to be. And so essentially what started to happen is I started to develop those skill sets, though who I was at the core of who I am, started to develop. And I started to hone in on those things. And I started to question everything. I started questioning everything. I just didn't take anything for surface level. And I still don't now. My candidness started probably when I was a child. My biological mom started saying, "You have a flip mouth." Girl, I would and I'm like, no, I have questions because I no longer just sit back and watch life happen. And so the skills that I developed came over time because once I noticed something, for example, being able to question things, that is a skill. I know that there is nothing that I've done that I should be ashamed of because there are two cousins, Shame and Blame. They're first cousins. And they like to make you feel less than. And so the moment that you come from up under the shame and stop blaming everyone, take responsibility for how you contributed. Because let me say this, it wasn't everybody else. A lot of the decisions I made were me. I made the decisions. Now, I can blame the environment. I can blame, all those things play factors. But at the end of the day, those were decisions I made. So when you get past the whole shame and blame piece, those first cousins, they will absolutely kill you and have you living a life of less than, then you begin to develop and to hone in on those skills and be able to hear and see what it is you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to navigate.
These skills don't, like I was saying before you came on, the skills don't just show up automatically. You have to be intentional in developing them. So Lauren, the first step is awareness. That's where you are. You're aware that you want something more. There's something here you need to work on. There's something you need to be doing about this stuff. So that's the first step. And the second step is just to be intentional in developing what it is you need to be able to cope with what's going on around you. So if it's relationship, you may want to begin to read about how to manage relationships, how to manage your emotions, find out more about yourself, why you respond to certain things the way you do. Those are just, without having detail, those are just pointers that I can give you. But then that's the good thing about having a coach as well, because a coach is all about raising your awareness. Most people think coaches are there to tell them what to do. A coach is not there to tell you what to do. A coach is there to question what's going on around you so that you can come up with the answers, so that you can assess your life and recognize what's going on, because you have what it, like Diseree was saying, you have what it takes inside. It's just a question of being able to bring it out.
So it's just like a midwife, and I know we have a lot of ladies on here. Gentlemen, please forgive me for a second. I'm talking about birth, and I know you know absolutely nothing about it. But before I give birth, there has to be someone there to pull that baby out, a midwife, a doctor of sorts. And so that's what a coach is. If there is a gap between where you are and where you want to be, there's probably room for a coach, because oftentimes we're blinded by our own shortcomings and our own, sometimes we don't even see our own potential either. We don't see it. And so that's what started to happen. People started to speak into my life and tell me things that I didn't believe about myself, or that I didn't see in myself. And so I started to question those things. And then I became, like you said, the key word here is being intentional. Every day I decided that I am now, because of all of my life transformation and journey that I've been on, I am like a personal development junkie. I am constantly, I mean, I don't even, my daughter's like, Mom, when's the last time you watched TV? I don't know. Like, let's do something now. Like, she has to sit me down. Like last night, we have Friday movie night at our house. So I do that. But that's pretty much it, because I'm constantly with my earbuds in, one of them at least, and I'm listening to something, even in my subconscious, if I'm not totally focused on it. I am very intentional about being the best person I can be for myself, my family, and those.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So sometimes you're just too into it to actually see what's going on, and you just need that person from outside to be able to look at it objectively, so you can get the real picture of what's going on. And the intentionality is absolutely key. You have to be intentional. So let me read our next question. How do you overcome rejection by people who are close to you, for example, a mother? I thought I did overcome all that, but I keep being reminded that I'm not good enough, which brings low self-esteem. That is so true. There are lots of people who have that, who suffer from that. Sometimes things happen in our past and we think we've gotten over it, but something happens and then it resurfaces, and it just shows that there's healing work that needs to be done there. Before I speak more into that, this area, because you alluded to the fact that there was something there about you and your biological mom as well. Obviously, it wasn't rejection, but do you want to just speak into what Annette is asking? How do you deal with rejection when it's so close to home, basically? When it's so close to home?
There was some rejection from her that I felt that I was receiving. And even years after, I would try to build relationship, and it just wouldn't work. And sometimes you have to realize that the rejection from other people really has nothing to do with you. Oftentimes they have their own issues that they have not resolved themselves or come to with to realize that they have. And so for me, I realized that, everything that I ever thought that she may have thought about me, and because oftentimes too, we make up stories in our head because we never ask the person, what's the issue? What can we have a conversation about it? So we create stories, and then they grow over time, these disillusions, and so you have to be very careful that that's not your situation, or that's not what you're doing. And then you have to then again question. So if you're believing that you're being rejected, why do you believe that? Do they treat anyone else like that? Are you sure it's only you, or is it this person's type personality? Is it, because some, like, I know I have a family member that's just kind of standoffish. Not rejection, that's just who they are. So sometimes you have to get to the core of who the person is that you're feeling rejected by. Then do some soul searching yourself. Why is it that you have to feel connected to this person, and why does their connectivity mean so much to you? Why is it so valuable? And then for me personally, what I had to do was realize that, again, a lot of the issues that my biological mother had, she probably still has them, I don't know, but they had nothing to do with me. And so you have to come to the resolve that you may not ever get an apology. You may not ever get closure. The best thing for you to do for your own mental and emotional health, and sometimes your own physical safety, is to leave it as is, because you may never know the answer. Sometimes digging does not always help. And I know that we like to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to call so-and-so and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Well, sometimes that's not the most effective way, depending upon the situation that you're in. And so, yes, I also dealt with low self-esteem because, again, I was never affirmed when I was younger, except from outside entities. And that's not always enough when you're a child. You want to hear that you're valued and you're loved and you're cared for and you're beautiful inside of your home, inside of the locus of control. So I heard a lot of that on the outside, which is where I ended up running to. That's why I went to the outside, because that's where I was getting affirmed. And so on the inside, I was melting, and I was, and so again, on my journey, when I started to realize I had value, that's when I saw value in myself. When I realized I can produce, I can do this, I can become, then that's when I started to feel better about myself. I used to be told that I was pretty for a dark-skinned girl. That's one of the things that stick out to me. Clearly, I can't change the color of my skin. So what the heck am I supposed to do? Mary, what am I supposed to do about that? And so sometimes you have to look outside of yourself and figure out, how does someone that I want to be, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? You find that model. It's nothing wrong with that, even as an adult. You find that model, and then you start to do what they do, in a sense, because success, whether it is emotional success, physical success, monetary success, it always leaves footprints. And so you look for those footprints, those footprints in the sand, and then you imitate, not duplicate. You can never be someone else. You're yourself, you're your own person, but you imitate those things, those characteristics, those values, and you start developing yourself, and that will for sure boost that self-esteem and self-confidence up.
Absolutely. I think when we start to suffer that low self-esteem is we make it personal to us, and we think it's because of us. And it's not just rejection from a mother, it could be divorce as well. When you go through things like that, you think, oh, there was something wrong with me. Even when parents get divorced, the children tend to think it's because of them. There was something wrong with them. That's why the parents got divorced. I don't know why we do it, but we tend to think it's my fault. Even people that get abused tend to think it was my fault. There must have been something I did to attract it to me. Why didn't it happen to somebody else? Well, I just need you to understand it wasn't you. It had nothing to do with you. So I think if you just accept that fact, for one, it might help with the feeling of low self-esteem, because the only reason you're feeling low self-esteem is you're thinking you're not good enough. And that's probably why your mother rejected you. But it had nothing to do with you. So I think that's the first thing. Obviously, we can't go into too much detail in this program. We need to have a chat. We said it last week, Annette. You and I need to have a chat. But sometimes counseling helps with things like this as well, because counseling helps you to deal with the past. But like Diseree said, sometimes you never are able to fully get the resolve that you want, and you just have to put closure and think, okay, am I going to allow somebody ruin my past and ruin my future? Where do I go from here? So the important thing is to say, from here on, I want this for my life. And if this is what's stopping me, I need to deal with this so I can move on. So we're thinking about the future. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mary. And just when you said that, I just had a light bulb moment. Sometimes time heals things. And so sometimes you just wait it out. Like, I never imagined that I would have the conversation that I had with my biological mom when I did. Like, who would have thought me finally telling my truth would bring her attention? So sometimes it's like, sometimes people don't even know that they're doing something to you. But like you said, we personalize everything. I do believe that some people are just malicious, and people do know that they're doing things. But sometimes that's not always the case. And so just be careful with that. I definitely had counseling myself. I am a big fan of counseling. Counseling is for undoing the past and getting resolved with your past. And so I love that. I have a counselor in my phone on my Rolodex, because I just believe that sometimes you just need one. You need therapy. I'm a big, proponent of everyone needs therapy or a therapist at some point for something. And so, and then I pray that you, find peace with it, and God will give you the download you need in order to deal with your situation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So you started the transformation. Now you're a transformational coach. Tell us the statement, your purpose statement now. What is it that you're passionate about right now?
Let me tell you, I am all about the woman. So my ultimate goal is to help women master their mindset, so that they can thrive, sustainably thrive, okay, in life, love, and career. Because once we master that mindset, I think it filters into every other area of our life. And so that's my ultimate goal. I don't want, women around me who are broken. I feel like there's so many, broken girls inside of the bodies of women. And I'm just here to try to help undo some of that doing in terms of building out your future. I am not a counselor, though my background is in counseling. My master's is in counseling. That's not what I do. I'm all about the future. and understanding how all the things that you've gone through has literally prepared you for your next moment. We just don't realize
Absolutely.
when we start picking up those tools, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's why I had that job, or oh, that's what that relationship was about. And so just using all the tools that you've been given that you don't even realize you're holding a toolbox, and being able to build out the future that you want to see.
Yeah. So
That's
nothing
it.
is wasted. No pain is wasted. No
Nothing.
disappointment is wasted. Nothing is wasted. It's just about taking everything that's happened in your life and putting it in your future and thinking, okay, what can I use from there? What can I draw from there? What lesson, what truth, what principle can I learn to take me forward? We're all about going forward because we shouldn't be going back. We shouldn't be going back. We don't even need, and that's what you were saying, Diseree, you don't even need to understand everything that happened in your past and why it happened, and you don't even need to know all that to be able to move forward. That's the truth. So really, really awesome. I'm going to ask you one question. So you mentioned your background was in teaching, but now you're into coaching, speaking, and training. So what made you want to make that transition? They're both in education, so not too far apart, but what made you want to leave the teaching profession and do what you're doing right now?
So during my own transformation, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, and I was teaching throughout that time. And I have a couple of other career paths. I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Where did I fit? Because I knew that it was always in a teaching capacity. I just didn't know the platform. And so I taught for years, and God kept saying, you know, I was getting frustrated. And it just, you know, to me, when frustration starts to set in, it means that it's a time for a shift. I've always kind of been a coach, so to speak. I just never gave myself a title because I don't really get
Yeah.
into it's what I've done all along. And so when I finally came to myself in an awareness, like, this is what you'll do, and it was just really 2 years ago. This is my second year in this space, in this lane. And so I just stepped out there and I did it, and it became clear that the entire time that I was teaching in the classroom, God said the world is now your classroom. You're still teaching. Now you have a bigger reach and can make a larger impact.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying about you having been doing something without the title, without maybe even the formal training, because that's exactly how it was for me. It was only a few years ago after I turned 50, probably about, I don't want to say how many years ago now, but just a few years ago, actually a few months ago, that it suddenly everything came together. So
Yeah.
everything I had done in the past, it all
Yep.
suddenly came together, and I could
Everything
say
makes
for the yeah, I could say for the first time, you know what? This is actually what I'm about. I'm about empowering people. So I've always
sense.
been about empowering people, but empowering people in different ways. And you
Yeah.
would sometimes think, so just to give you an example, there was a time I was a music director and it was empowering people, but people thought it was about the music. But suddenly I've come to realize it wasn't actually about the music. For me, what was exciting was the empowering the choir to be able to deliver the song. So it's always been about empowering. So to finally be able to say, oh, actually this is what I'm about. You
Yeah.
know, when you're being, it's almost like forceful, when you're being overbearing because you want people to succeed, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I know why I'm like that now. I know
Yeah.
why
I
it's
know
because I
I'm
want.
always in someone else's business telling them what they need to do next. So where are you?
Exactly.
Okay, so have you done this yet? It's like everyone who talks to me, siblings included, are always like, here she goes. I'm sorry. You already know how I'm coming, and you already know the question I'm going to ask. So I'm coming so we can move forward. It's always forward moving. Like, what are you doing
Yeah.
now? What's the next step? Let's get a plan together. So absolutely. I
Yeah,
can.
totally, totally. Thank you so much, Desiree. We're out of time, but
Thank
it's
you
just
so
been
much.
it's been amazing. It's just been awesome. And I have so many comments here. Let me just read a few. Um, Lola says, you can't stop others having their opinion about you. It does not define you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It does not define you. Other people can try and devalue you, but the value that you place on yourself is the most important value.
Yeah.
Everybody can think you're the best thing since sliced bread, but if you think it's true, but if you think you're rubbish, you're gonna act like rubbish. So
Yeah.
the opinion of people doesn't really matter. It's your opinion, what you truly believe, that
Mhm.
matters. Thank
Yeah.
you all so much for joining us today. I've had
Listen here.
an
You know it's
amazing
safe
time.
here.
I've had an awesome time today. Thank you. A bit of technical hitches here and there, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you. It's been amazing. It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for
Thank
having me.
you, guys. Thank you. If you haven't liked the video, please like it, love it, share it. And we'll see you same time next Saturday, 2 p.m. BST on Future Fit. And remember, if you say you can, you're right. If you say you can't, you're right. It's entirely up to you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.